Hey, how's it going? So in this video, I want to talk about fucking. Not really. I want to talk about the motivations, some of the motivations that lead to the creation of people. And I said I was going to do that in the last video, but I didn't even really end up really doing that much. It was just, it ended up being like another useless advice video. The advice being try to be really, really careful about who you fuck and how you fuck them, because the stakes are pretty high and the slope is rather slippery. It's a very slippery slope. You know, if you're a young man, it's very easy to shoot yourself in the foot and fuck yourself over at a relatively young age. And not just yourself, but like other people too. It's pretty easy to do that for a lot of young men out there. So if you fall into that category of person, that you stand to create a person with a person that you'll end up probably regretting that with quite deeply about. If you are potentially in those sorts of shoes, you got to be careful about that, because that is a very common way in which many people ruin not only their lives but like other lives. So you gotta try to be careful. And of course, it's far easier said than done, because we are very unreasonable, irrational primates. I know I am. I am a very, very stupid animal sometimes, and I'm like, especially when I was younger. And so you got to watch out for that, because your brain is going to try to really fuck you over hard. It's going to really, and it's not intentional. It's not like it has, but that part of you, you got to watch out for that. And you got to try not to feed into it, because it's easy to do that too. It's easy to feed into these parts of ourselves that are really not that great and are really worth minimizing. And that's one of them. That's one common part that a lot of young men feed into, just going around shooting loads like it costs nothing, like it's risk free, and it's not. It isn't. It stands to come at a pretty steep cost. And I think that I'm going to try to keep this video pretty short, because attention spans are getting pretty short. So I'm going to try to have that reflected in these sorts of. But one of the main fucking talking points, one of the main ones when it comes to the discussion of these sorts of topics, when it comes to discussing some of the implications of reproduction, of creating people, of bringing about that process, because it's a hell of a thing to bring about, obviously, right? Creating people, that's a big fucking deal. And many people don't really treat it as though it is. And one of the really, really clear ones, is that it's really difficult to wrap your head around, to conceptualize your potential prospective children before you've created them. The idea that it's a possibility for you, it's easy to take that for granted, and just the future in general, and trying to think about where your life is headed, and trying to really have a more of an appreciation for what you do now is pretty fucking paramount in terms of where this is going for you, and like how severely you suffer, and what you suffer for, like what ends up being the causes of your misery later on. This stuff, you got to think about this shit when you're young and rather stupid. You got to try. You have to try to really attempt to process the fact that you are quite likely to fall into that very common category of person that is going to eventually have children one day, and for better or worse. Many people end up doing that, and they just, no thought was given to what that means to do it. To create a person, not a baby, but a fucking person, someone that's going to become something a lot more complex than a baby. I think, in general, like some of the worst and best, most understandable reasons as to why people end up, but just on both sides, some of the worst reasons as to what people will cite as being why they want children and why they don't want children, especially when we're rather young, is that very, very small window of time that takes place in when your child is an infant, when your child is a child. And it's important to acknowledge that's a very small portion of the time that they'll be alive, and they'll have to experience stuff. And oftentimes that portion of time isn't where the bulk of the substantial experiences will take place. So the stuff that really has the vast majority of the substance is going to take place later on. So you have to think about that. You're not just having a child, you're having something that is going to become so much more. I feel like that's a point to stick to, like a good sort of talking point. Just, hey, listen, if you're going to create a person, you're doing something that's a really, really big fucking deal, and you should think about it more than many people seem to do that. Because many people don't fucking think about it.